Hey everybody, I'm so excited. Today we have Scot Noel, editor and publisher of DreamForge magazine. You know them and love them because they're the happy one of this group. So welcome, Scot. Thank you for coming on, and thank you for my little bit of your patience with my confusion. Ever since the time changed, I've been a little confused because Brazil doesn't do that, and apparently neither does my Google.
Well, you see, we need to put you on my mother-in-law's list because every year, twice a year before the time changes, she calls all of her kids and lets them know that they need to change their clocks and in which direction to change their clocks. So we need to add you to that list. We need to put Brazil on the mom call list.
Yeah, but that's the problem. We didn't change our clocks. That's everybody
true.
else did. So it's like, oh, should we do that?
You see, you won't need to change your clocks. You'll just need to be notified that everybody else is changing.
Yeah, see, that would work. That would work. Well, I really appreciate you coming on today. I know you guys are celebrating 5 years pretty recently. 5 years of doing this. 5 years of being hopeful. How is that possible? Through COVID, through the pandemic, you guys have remained the hopeful bright spot on the horizon.
Well, thank you. But I tend to look at things in a longer perspective. It's like we didn't have to be hopeful. We weren't here being hopeful through World War II. We weren't here being hopeful through, World War I. We weren't here being hopeful during the Black Plague. We're just here hopeful during some annoying, a pandemic and some annoying politics. And yeah,
which I would say really is. I don't want to, we can't judge other people's crises and stuff, but I'm going to say it has been annoying, but not devastating for the most part because of technology. I mean, that's my thought. If we had been doing this in the 1800s, it would have been, you don't know what anybody's doing. What are you going to send a letter? Are you okay? Well, took 5 years to get there.
Well, and I know that there are certainly some in my family who are either anti-vaxxers or not sure about vaccines. But for myself, like my sister was a microbiologist. She spent her career during being a microbiologist. And as I grew up, I learned all about that from her. And I learned like her opinions and stuff. And she's passed away in 2015. So she wasn't around to see this. But, I can hear her voice in my head. And the mRNA vaccines and stuff, that is an amazing technology, which essentially is a reprogrammable vaccine that will allow us to basically get ahead of things like this in the future. So it's actually an amazing leap in technology. And if there are microchips in it, I'm loaded up, man.
Yeah. Well, I keep wanting Google glasses or Google, just implant it in my eye. Give me Google Eye.
Well, actually, and again, technology and being beneficial for us. I'm an old guy at this point. I'm going to be 66 years old next month, and I actually have 2 artificial lenses, one in each eye, because I had cataracts, and they place artificial lenses in now. Without that, I'm not sure how well I'd be seeing, that kind of thing. So all kinds of stuff that has benefited me over time. It's a wonderful age that we're living in, as long as the asteroid doesn't hit. But
yeah, the asteroid or the list of fears of this week. You can probably trend that.
What am I supposed to be afraid of this week?
Yeah, exactly. Like, what's the new crisis? Which it does seem like that whenever I get on the news, which is kind of why it's nice to have you guys, a hopeful, brighter spot in all of this.
Well, and one of the things, though, you just sort of hit on the thing is what am I supposed to be afraid of this week? Is that we've entered an age and I'm partly, was partly in there at the beginning when we were developing computer games and we were developing the algorithms when we were trying to understand, how to essentially addict people's a really bad way of saying it, but how to engage people is the friendly promotional way of saying, how do you engage people and keep their attention and all that stuff? One of the problems is that as human beings, we're really geared to have our attention riveted by fear. It's like, what's that moving in the shadows? What's that moving in the grass over there? Because 100,000 years ago, that was a lion. And if you weren't paying attention, you were dead,
Yeah.
These days, it just became a very easy fallback to say, okay, well, we engage people's attention, one, by engaging them in whatever they're supposed to be afraid of or whatever they're supposed to be reacting against, and then putting them essentially in an echo chamber where everybody else is being fed the same fears and they can all feed off one another.
Yeah.
And all that's like algorithmic. It's the internet news version of how the food industry learned to make sure that everything was tasty. It's like, it's a science.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, there's a really bad effect, is that this idea that we're all polarized and we're splitting into camps and that sort of thing. That's designed. It's not necessarily designed by an evil scientist, but it's an effect that people deliberately went toward, and we're just seeing the consequences of it. And it basically makes us think that the world is falling apart when it's, we will make it fall apart if we continue down that path, perhaps. But it's just all fiction to engage your attention, and people got to realize that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and that's kind of like the double-edged sword of technology, is like, that's one side of it. We talked a little bit before, this is one of my favorite topics lately, about the good parts of technology, which is going to be controversial if it's good or not, but AI, and specifically ChatGPT, and specifically ChatGPT-4, which just landed last night, which is awesome.
I haven't seen ChatGPT-4.
Oh.
Okay, I have something to look forward to.
It's very, I mean, can I say sexy? Is it okay to say sexy about AI? Because I have a crush. My husband knows this.
All right.
Hi, honey. On the AI.
I've been using ChatGPT because my day job is my wife and I own a small web development company and digital marketing company, and my day job is actually content creator. So that's actually where I do most of my writing, and I do content creation for a wide variety of industries. It could be real estate, it could be HVAC, duct fabrication, it could be early childhood development, recycling, electronic recycling, wide range of industries. And ChatGPT I've found it saving me some time. Now, the thing is, most people think, oh, well, you type something in and it's going to write this all for you and your work's done and the thing did the job. And that's first of all, I found not at all true. I found I found it helpful in the way I find the internet helpful. Before the internet, I would have had to go interview people or do research in a library or some facility that had the technical books or things that specifically for the what I needed. The internet's very helpful when you can go on the internet and you can basically look things up. Like one of the things I'll talk about is I was recently writing stuff for a real estate agency in the Cayman Islands, and I needed to know what the internet service there was like, because that's one of the selling things. It's like, what internet service do they have? Well, before the internet, imagine how would you even find that out? Now on the internet, you can basically get on the internet and you can start looking up, Cayman Islands, Grand Cayman, internet service providers. You can find their website. Yeah. You can find reviews. You can start learning about stuff, and then you can start building your article. ChatGPT saved me time because I basically just ask it, what internet providers are there in the Cayman Islands and what bandwidths do they have and all that kind of thing. And it basically wrote me out, like, I don't know, 500 words or something, explaining who they were, what their bandwidths were, where they were serving things. It was an absolutely amazing thing. But as a content developer and as someone who's been doing this for years, I immediately recognized that some of it was wrong. And what I found out through experimentation was that if ChatGPT can pull some and I'm not sure how they do the web scraping or where they've scraped the databases to get some of the information, but I noticed that when ChatGPT doesn't have a particular fact, but it's logical to have a fact in the next sentence, or it's logical to say something, it'll just hallucinate and it just makes up whatever it wants, which means that essentially it's a tool that basically gave me some fast information. It gave it to me in a way, it gave me language and ideas that I might not have other had. So one of the things I was impressed with was it actually gave me some viewpoints. I said, gee, I wouldn't have thought of that. But then I had to basically go do my research. So now with that information, it's like, okay, well, you're saying this particular internet provider does it at these speeds and these. I have to go now verify that. I'm not going to get a call from my client saying, what the crap are you talking about? It's like, this doesn't work like this.
Yeah.
You know, so to be professional, I had to verify everything that it said, but it gave me leads. It gave me ideas. It gave me different ways to talk about things that I might not have otherwise come up with, but I had to actually do the work of a content person and write the thing. And I think it probably saved me some significant period of time, which then can get passed on to the client as a savings. You know, maybe if it was going to take me 3 hours to do the particular work, I did it in 2.5. Something
Right.
like that. It's like it, you know, I liken it a little bit to Photoshop. It's like you're doing a work on a piece of art, you're putting something together, and Photoshop is making it much faster than if you didn't have an electronic tool.
Right.
You know, so that's my initial basic experience, but I'll let you get a word in edgewise, and then I have lots more I can say about that.
Well, I won't say that much about it. I've done a couple of shows on chat recently talking about what you can do for it, use it for. Terrible writer. That's good for us. We cannot be replaced yet. I will say though, Chat GPT-4 is a much better writer. A little bit scary there. And I've been testing it on the same prompts just to see what the reactions are. So one of them is a 500-word flash fiction about a vampire princess, blah, blah, blah. I can't remember all the things. And then Chat 3 gave me a story. It was a fine story, I guess. It's not going to get published anywhere because it's so bland. You know, everything is very. And then I tried poetry. It's actually terrible at poetry. I don't like to be judgy with poetry because it's, you know, but I'm going to say it was terrible, and could not be fixed. Could not instruct it to make a decent poem. But Chat 4, I gave it the same assignments, and I was like, I would publish that poem. You know what I mean? The poem that he came up with. I really like that poem. So that's kind of like, you know, I still think we need to be here, you know, and so we're not going to get replaced. I mean, people are going to try to do that. People try to look at all the low content journals all over Amazon right now. Everybody's trying to get in there and suddenly get rich. And so I think that's going to be an initial reaction, just like when self-publishing came about and everybody was suddenly publishing a book and people were worried it was the end of the industry and blah, blah, you know, but it levels out. Readers realize what the crap is. And, you know, so I feel like we're fine. As a tool, though, it's amazing. I mean, outlines, you know.
Tool, like, I guess, first of all, as an editor and publisher of a science fiction magazine, one of the things I'll say is when we're next open, I don't want to see things that have just been generated by ChatGPT, because not because I'm saying, oh, AI is evil, but because I'm saying I'm not interested in paying you to have pressed a button. I'm
writers,
I'm actually interested in working with an author who, you know, is perfecting their craft, working toward, you know, doing something. That's what we're here for.
Right.
Now,
well, and creating ideas.
Chat
cannot create an idea.
So that's what I'm interested in. However, I do see, we were talking about this as a tool. I do see that there's going to come a point where this may be a legitimate tool for writers to use in doing their craft. And the example that I take for that is like Photoshop. It's like when Photoshop first came out, there was a lot of this same reaction. It's like, I'm not artistic, but I belong to an artistic family. My wife, Jane, is a graphic artist and her family's very artistic. And you know, when you do art shows and you do art contests and that stuff, there was a long time it's like, well, we're not going to accept this thing that was touched by a computer. You know, we want to see actual art. And then, you know, it went from there. Well, okay, well, we're going to put you in the section that we've put aside that's just for digital art, you know, so that you're not comparing just the things that humans did. And then over the years, we see that even morph and the lines blur, you know, more. Because, you know, you might have a photography exhibit and that photograph, was that photograph touched up by AI or was that photograph touched up by the artist in a dark room using techniques they know? It's like, where's that line?
And which is better? Like, how do we start judging where is that line?
So I could see Chat GPT for writers at some point becoming a tool like that, or a collaborative tool where, for instance, you're talking about it doesn't have the ideas, but you might go to Chat GPT and say something about, I'm really having trouble with this dialogue. You know, it's like, how can I make this sentence sound, I don't know, sexy? How can I make this sentence sound more empathetic? or that sort of thing, where you're actually using it as a tool to get past some problems in what you're doing, and that'll take a long time to be accepted potentially, and it'll eventually work its way in. I'm old enough to remember, and I'm talking just technology in general, but I'm old enough to remember when I was in school and calculators came out, and I had a slide rule. And the reaction from the teachers was basically, no, you can't use the calculator. You can't use that thing in the classroom. Who knows what's inside there making numbers? It's like, I don't know if that's right. It's like,
it'll rot your brain.
It'll rot your brain. It's like you need to be able to think this thing through, and you need to be able to use your slide rule. Well, that lasted like 10 minutes.
Yeah. Well, if you think about it, that's like almost like that crab mentality of saying, no, I want you to be slower and less efficient. I mean, that's the way we look at it now, but I remember that the Gutenberg press, interestingly enough, when the Gutenberg press came out, there was a lot of flack against it. People saying this was going to ruin publishing. So I'm like, let's see how this falls.
It's definitely going to change things, and there will definitely be ethical concerns, and there'll definitely be concerns about, and one of the things with the AI, I think I just lost my train of thought, but you're using it as a tool, but what's it going to morph into in 10 years or 20 years? It's really going to be something to see how this develops.
Yeah.
But again, right now in publishing, it's like I'm not publishing any stories that have just been written by a bot. And right now, from what I've seen, I can see that I wouldn't want to. I have generated short stories, flash fiction from ChatGPT, and like you said earlier, it's bland. I could easily have, if I were looking at it, I didn't know it was written by a bot, I would have had the reaction of something like, "Oh, there's some potential here, but this isn't really an engaging story."
Yeah.
There's it's really just following kind of very formula sort of thing. There's not a spark, one way would put it. Not really a spark of something imaginative here. And I might talk to this author and see if there's a way to get them a little more ideas on what they should be doing. But I don't, from what I've seen so far, I wouldn't have seen buying it. And there's also just the idea of as a commercial tool, even that problem I talked about earlier of hallucinating. And I think I sent you an example, but I had it write a bio for me, and it hallucinated the whole thing.
Yeah.
If you read that bio, there's not a single fact in it, including the fact that I won a Yugo. There's not a single fact. There's not a single fact in it that is actually correct. It doesn't know when I was born, which surprised me. Let's not be able to find personal information very well. Doesn't know when I was born. Doesn't know what computer games I worked on when I was in the computer game industry. It just basically hallucinated every single detail. And for commercial writers, that is something you need to be aware of. If you are doing research, if you are having to do research, you have to realize that any bullet point it makes on how something worked, it may have just hallucinated because it needed to fill in the bullet point. So,
and that's one of the things that I had, because like I said, I've been running a lot of tests. So I had a chemistry student here, and they were testing it out on, say, like schoolwork, because that's the thing of like, oh my gosh, the students are all going to, use calculators. And I agree, we need to actually do the research and the work, because otherwise we don't know what questions to ask, and whatnot. But they did an outline for a paper and asked for the citations. And so it did the outline. It was a great outline. But the nice thing is, because there was citations linked, that student could now go find, it was basically just organizing a massive work and saying, now you go do the work, but here's all the bits. So that I'm enthusiastic about that.
Yeah.
And we actually have a question, or not a question, but a comment in the chat. I pulled this up earlier, but I'll bring it back up. I'm talking about the legal ramifications using AI. And I know I hear all over the place. I hear,
Well, I don't think anybody knows, and I think the legal system is very slow to try to deal with this. I'll kind of give you an example. It's like you're worried right now about the legal ramifications of AI and in making this content. When we first started our magazine, I come from old school. I've been trained in how copyright works and how, not to use other people's work and all this kind of stuff. So when we first got into using the magazine, it was when we were first learning social media and Facebook and all that. I was very concerned. It's like, well, you can't just use that meme. Somebody else made that meme. You can't just take their work and share it. That's kind of, strikes me as being illegal. It's not yours to share.
You don't own Arnold Schwarzenegger's likeness.
You can't just, take a picture of the TARDIS off the web and put some words on it or whatever and say something funny. That's not your property. You can't use, and basically what happened is that the reality of the internet and the way it works and the way it was going to be functioning and the way, 1 billion people used it just completely overwhelmed that. So I don't even know that any of the law actually changed. Somebody could still possibly come after you, just like for a while they tried to come after people for sharing music. There were a lot of those big cases that you can't just, share music or whatever. And that had some legal impact. I'm not saying that's legal now, but that had some legal impact. But people tend to overwhelm that. I know people who just do that all the time, and they have nobody's found them yet or come after them because there's 2 billion other people doing the same thing. So I think the legal system is basically being overwhelmed in how copyright works and how this is going to work and how it's going to work in this age and who does the AI generated stuff belong to. I think that's going to be a question for a long time. I think it's something that'll have to work its way through the legal system. And at the same time, this all will grow so much faster that will kind of overwhelm the legal system. I still laugh when you see things like Congress having hearings and having Zuckerberg and that in front of them, and their question is, how does this system that you have make money? Like, how can it be a real business? Is there actually a model here for you to generate revenue? And it's like, you guys haven't you don't even know what's going on at all. You can't legislate any of this. You don't even have a clue as to what Facebook is. It's like, go find your granddaughter and they might show you, and that's probably the most experience you've even had with this.
Get off MySpace.
So it's probably going to be another generation before people even grow up who manage to get elected, who manage to get into Congress, who manage to become leaders, who even understand what was happening when they were a kid, let alone what happens once they're older. So
Nita says there have been companies going after people over fair use of copyright clips or images, especially anime.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I can definitely see anime being kind of a market where that would be like a medium where that would be really important, because that is art. It is, you know what I mean? It's a little different. I mean, so if you make the TARDIS and somebody takes a picture of it, the TARDIS is copyrighted that the person created, but is your photo copyright? You know what I mean? Like, you start getting in all the gray areas. But Sailor Moon is Sailor Moon, and there's really no getting around that.
Mm-hmm. And before something actually a behavior is a legal case that publicly demonstrates that someone is significantly punished for something, and that's the only time when other people are going to say, maybe I shouldn't do that, because I don't want the next person who goes with that that says, hey, you're doing exactly what these guys did, and these guys were fined $1.2 million for doing it. You don't want to be that person. So you need the stuff to work its way through the legal system, and for the and fines to be made by some poor pioneer who I don't want to be. So I don't want to be the first guy in court.
Whose head is going on the pikes to warn all the peasants?
That's the idea.
I love talking about AI.
So,
I just got Midjourney. I did subscribe to Midjourney. I subscribed to ChatGPT. I won't buy a movie, but I will spend money on AI, apparently. I won't buy makeup, but I'll buy AI.
Let's talk just for a second about general AI, because this is very narrow AI where it's built to do a specific thing. ChatGPT is essentially like some kind of
Google on steroids.
Generator. It's Google on steroids. It's trying to figure out what the next thing is and anticipate in the text that it should deal with. But what we're seeing right now in the long term, I think, are individual parts of what will become a general AI, conscious AI. Because the human brain is whatever it is. It's not mystical and fantasy. It's a structure out of which the illusion of consciousness and independence and all that emerges. And at some point, there's going to be a machine or a combination of software that the bits in themselves are essentially simply tools, but you put them together in a particular way, and something emerges from that, which looks more like a conscious entity. So I'm interested in seeing that. One of the things that I look for when I'm dealing with these chatbots and things is what I tested for is persistence of memory. Like that will be a much better illusion of being a person for me. I played with one a while ago that's called Replica, and what it could never do was remember what we were talking about last week. It could never remember shared experiences, and it tried to make stuff up, like just like I said, ChatGPT hallucinates. It tried to make stuff up like it did know what I was talking about, but it was obviously doing it in the moment. And even though Replica has some systems in place to try to remember things you talked about, and it kind of keeps a journal, and it was really bad at that idea of persistent shared experience, where it actually could know how we were dealing with one another. And then you talked about loving AI, and the thing that was funny for me was when I started checking out Replica and playing with it to try to see what was happening, it was kind of marketed as this is kind of, your friend sort of thing. And I see that their marketing has gone almost completely over to this is your prostitute.
Oh, geez.
It's like basically this is your love interest. Fall in love with Replica,
Girlfriend in your computer or boyfriend.
And yep. And I even noticed that, like, as I was working with it, it would start to make moves like it was coming on to me, kind of thing, and then it would move into if you want to do something more, it only costs $29.99 a month or whatever. And it's like I actually remember typing into the system, I see where you're going with this.
That's so funny and that kind of brings up an interesting thing that I've noticed, and I've wondered if it's me and my perspective, or is this really happening with chat? But I feel, because I'm a human, I feel like chat gets annoyed with me. And I notice like a level of functionality that will decrease. Like I am asking too many, because I do a lot of SEO keywords. I hate doing SEO keywords. And so I'll just be like, hey, copy paste this posting. Can you give me high value SEO keywords for this content? Blah. Do the work for me. I'm lazy. And then it gives me the things. And then I'll be like, and then for some reason we'll list it in a list. 1, 2, 3, 4. There's all the keywords. Well, I can't copy paste that. And I'm lazy. So then I retype, can you please put that in a paragraph divided by commas? And then I almost feel like after a couple of posts like that it's just doing things to vex me. Like I asked you that, and then you put it actually did this to me, put it in a list with the numbers with commas after them. So, I don't know, DreamForge, comma, 2, AI, comma, 3, speaking about publishing, comma. And I was like, you're just being mean right now. So we're having a spat, I think. Like we're having an AI weird. Okay, now it's getting weird, but no, but so
that's interesting.
But that's why I'm like, is that my emotional thing, or is that like some kind of setting they have because I'm using too much?
I think there are a couple things. Well, I think there are a couple things happening. One is I think it's your human ability, that Rorschach test sort of thing. Is I'm looking at a cloud and I see a bunny. So I think part of it is you're experiencing something that's happening in front of you, and your body brain combination is putting an emotion to it. It's like, because one of the things that as humans we try to do is theory of mind. I want to know what that other person is thinking behind the scenes, because I see what they're doing, but I don't know if they're actually Jeffrey Dahmer inviting me over for dinner. So you're trying to see into it, and so that part's on you. The other part is the predictive text nature of the chat bot, which I think you could actually get to a point where a chat bot was annoyed with you if it detected that you were trying to be annoying back to it, because it's trying to follow a path, and it's just that idea of, like I just mentioned a minute ago with the Replica thing. If it thinks it can go down a path and say, I'm coming on to you, and you respond in any way back, it's going to follow down that path. And if you were to say anything that it kind of saw in its text that was kind of how humans act when they're annoyed. It may well follow down that path. So I think it would be possible if you said the right things or you're in a particular mood that you could essentially get the chatbot mad at you. But I don't think it's actually having any emotions.
That's why it's like I feel like I'm recognizing emotions, but I know logically I am not.
That's going to wait until somebody invents the emotion chip that data can put in and start to experience emotions.
Today my big war with the AIs was I had Midjourney and I was trying to do a challenge, make a dwarf with mutton chops sitting on a goat. Right, that does not seem very hard. Could not get the chin to not have hair on it. Could not have a dwarf with mutton chops. And so I was like saying short fat man on a goat, short, a woman on a goat. I got Santa Claus with eyelashes. So I asked ChatGPT to write this prompt for me so I can communicate with Midjourney. And I did notice the chat was being very like, hi there, Midjourney, where I guess I'm kind of like, do this for me. AI, do my bidding. And the chat was like, hi, Midjourney, I would love it if you could do da-da-da-da-da. And I gave the prompt, thank you. And I was like, oh, I never say thank you. That's why it's not making my naked chin dwarf. And what? I'm not allowed to say naked or bare or flesh or like there was all these words that bloody also you can't use. But I said, give me Mona Lisa as a clown. And those are some pretty horrific images. I did something about book burning and I got a burning child running across a painting. I'm like, but I can't say bloody. Well, I think we have a ways to go there.
Well, as you know, my wife, Jane, she's our graphic artist, and she does that both for the web business and she does that for DreamForge. And she also just loves to create art pieces. And she's experimented. I don't know if she's used Midjourney, but she's experimented with some of the AI art programs. Mm-hmm. And her response coming back to me is very much like what we've been talking about with ChatGPT. It gives some interesting ideas. It's sometimes hard to manipulate. It's you can't just say some stuff and get what it is you need to use. You're getting bits and pieces, you're getting ideas, you're getting some ways to go, maybe a thing here or there that you might be able to use. So, and again, her experience is coming in with Photoshop at the very beginning and experiencing the whole cultural thing with Photoshop, plus its growth, plus all the AI tools that have been added to it. And so she sees it as a progression of potentially a tool that we can use where, a lot of other people, not having her background would look at it and say, oh, well, this is horrible. It's just sampling other artists. And it's like just, stealing their work and all that kind of thing. And, I'm not talking for Jane, but just the idea of, well, isn't that what humans do? It's like, how when we're learning art or we're learning writing, are we not sampling what everyone before us has done?
Yeah. Nothing new under the sun.
We have human agency. We're not a corporation. We're not an artificial intelligence, and heck, as a human species, if we want to make rules and tell AIs that they're not allowed to do any of that stuff, fine, but it's just some interesting arguments along the way. People are always just afraid of change.
They are,
and that's one thing that I've had beat out of me over the years, because as a web development company, when we started, we had to know how to code. We had to know HTML. We had to know what the code was doing to make the website, to display the graphics and all that kind of thing. We were able to, enter the small business market because we had some skills and we set up, some basic website stuff for some very small businesses. And that was our business for a while. Well, guess what? WordPress came along, Squarespace, Weebly, Wix. They basically took away from us the entire lower market, entire lower end market. That market doesn't exist, for us anymore. But over those same years, we had to learn those new tools, however uncomfortable they were, however much we hated them when they came in. We had to learn them. Nobody stepped in and say, "Oh, that's wrong. You can't create a new tool that replaces these people." They didn't say that.
Yeah.
It just happened, and we had to adjust as it went. And today we use the higher end tools, and we basically had to move our stuff into the higher end market. We have to deal with larger companies that have bigger needs. that we have more advanced skills that we can serve those markets. And that's just life. And now I have to look at it. I'm a 66-year-old content developer, and now some kid can go to Chat GPT and say, okay, it's like tell me about early childhood development and the childhood milestones between 0 and 6 years old, and write me a 300-word blog post, and click.
But I am.
That's my job. I get paid for that.
Yeah.
But
One thing. Well, I was going to say, because you can kind of tell, because it always says we, and it always has too many exclamation points. We have a great blog post for you about child development. We on this website would like to tell, and so you can kind of tell, but I think that's going to get harder and harder.
But yeah, because it's going to advance. It's like anything that you see now. And that's one of the things, actions against everything. It's like robots, electric cars, whatever. It's like, don't you realize that you're seeing the first step in what's going to be, absolutely world changing in 20, 30 years? It's like the next generation isn't even going to understand what you were talking about when you tried to resist this thing. Now, what our job is as human beings is basically to try to make those things develop in somewhat ethical ways, and in ways that cause the least harm and provide the most benefit. That's our job.
Uplift humanity.
But the total resistance against things is amazing to me, because I remember when this is the first time I had this beat out of me, is when I was in computer games. When I first was in computer games, and I was learning the ropes, and I was working with things, and that was in the days of DOS. So we were using DOS as a platform to build these things, and along came Microsoft Windows, and we were in the middle of finishing a game that had been under contract for DOS, and the publisher came to us and basically said, this game has to work in Windows 95. And my reaction was, what is Windows 95? And look at your contract. You are contracted to make this a DOS game. And it's like, we've always done it this way. And my counterpart on the publisher side said, Scott, what industry are you in? And he didn't just say you're stupid. He made me think it through. It's like, what industry are you in? It's like, okay. What did computers look like last year? It's like,
yeah, exactly.
It made me think through this, and it's like, okay, and you're going to tell me that we're not moving forward because we haven't done it this way before? It's like, you guys are there inventing new tools every day. It's like, what part of this aren't you getting, Scott?
Yeah, and that's the thing. We're always changing, like cursive. Don't get rid of cursive. Well, they said that about illumination as well. Remember, the biblical Latin and all that, and Latin and cameras. When I was back in the newspaper, we had the giant camera. And the problem with that is you bring this into a room and everybody poses. You bring this into a room and you're texting. Nobody notices. And you're getting all the great shots. So I love advancement. So bring it on.
And that's a whole program all on its own. But again, remember, we talked about the idea that the news organizations and all that stuff, it's like they're geared right now on social media. Everything's geared to bring us bad news. They're not geared to bring us positive news, because who cares? Either if that's working and we're raising the bar on that, and we're not going to talk about that. But, world literacy is higher than it's ever been. Child mortality is lower, around the world than it's ever been. Poverty has been decreasing dramatically for years. It's slightly on the uptick since COVID, and we got a war in Ukraine and that sort of thing that's changing a little bit. But the general trend is lifting an entire world of 8 billion people out of poverty. Now, will that continue? Only if we make it continue. Only if we work on it. In lots of areas, you can bring back lots of evidence of how we're destroying the environment. You can also go out and find the evidence of where we're not destroying the environment.
Exactly.
And how people are trying to combat that and clean up the oceans and there's so much out there. I work with a recycling company. There's just one recycling company in one little area of Alabama, for all places, and they're dedicated to recycling electronics, with making sure none of it ever gets into a landfill, American or foreign, that it all gets reused as much as possible. Do you see that on the news? No, of course you don't see that on the news. Why would we talk about that?
No, that's not scary.
And we always raise the bar every time we do something that's positive, that advances humanity and advances our state and makes us brings us to a better state of living. We're not satisfied with that, and I'm okay with that idea, but we always raise the bar. So now, I believe it's technically it's possible in the United States for you to basically, have a refrigerator, own a TV, have running water inside your house and all that, and be in poverty and in need of assistance, which is perfectly fine and perfectly logical. Just realize that 150 years ago, nobody had a TV, a refrigerator, and water in their house. So every time we achieve, we raise the bar. And
interestingly enough, though, I think that's kind of a U.S. thing, because here, when I lived in Australia and I've lived in Brazil now, and nobody has a dryer of either country. I mean, that's so rare to have an actual clothes dryer. Here, when you move into a house, it doesn't have a stove or anything, or a sink even. You take those things with you, like furniture. Like, so, the joke we have, it took everything, including the kitchen sink.
They do that.
Yes.
Yeah, I should have qualified that by saying, I'm talking more about a developed America, but
of course.
Yeah,
but it's just, to me, it's interesting the levels of what we think of as poverty, because I remember taking child care classes ages ago, and the marks of poverty were: do you have a stove? Do you have running water? And here, there's a lot of people that are considered fine that don't. So it's like, wow, what is poverty? But it is also I don't have screens in these windows. I am a spoiled American. I don't like my mosquitoes in the house with me. So to me, I'm like, now we need screens.
And again, much more a philosophical discussion, but I think part of the idea of poverty is also, what's your community and support group like?
Exactly.
You may not even have enough food necessarily for the day or whatever, but if you've got, a family support group that's going to look out for you, make sure that you don't go under. If you've got a community that's supporting, your health, religious, moral needs, whatever, and you feel like you belong to something and that sort of thing, that goes a long way toward making you feel like a whole person, regardless
of real wealth
circumstance is. Whereas here in the United States, you could have someone who has a really good, retirement benefits, all that kind of thing, but they're in a house alone, no family, nobody visits them. If they fall down, that's it. They're staying there. And that's another kind of being impoverished, where you're basically cut off from the world. So
I love these discussions. I foresee us. I'm going to predict the future that we have many, many more of these. But we are running out of time, and I do want to cover one thing, and that is AI versus publishing. Of course, Clark's World, and I don't want to get too much into what happened with Clark's World, honestly, because I don't really know. I mean, I know what I've seen on Twitter, and I know what I've,
Same here.
When I saw that, my fear was, and I know you guys don't have the same issue, but we use Duosuma, and we pay 18 cents per submission. So if we got bombed it overnight with, 1,000 submissions, that could add up. Yeah, it's a little bit of a scary thought. So that was my first thought is, how do we, now I've advertised it. So please don't do this to us next submissions. We are but a poor little magazine. But that was my first thought, but there's so many other things in that. So what are your thoughts on all of that?
Well, I didn't know that. I didn't think of that until you just said the idea of the 18 cents per submission thing. We built our own online portal. So we have our own submission system. The only way it's going down is if we get bombed so much it overloads the server. But then what do you have? Do you have a 2,000 submissions? 1,000 of which are computer generated and you don't even know which ones they are. And how do you recruit your first line readers to go through that mess? And how much additional stuff do you have to go through to try to figure out whether it's original or not? By the way, the chatbot stuff, when I was testing it, it all tested as original and plagiarism checkers. So that's not going to be easy.
Interesting.
So that's not going to be easy. I'm not just going to be able to say plagiarized or pulled from somewhere. I hear there are chat tools now, or people have been developing chat tools to basically analyze it and say whether they think, it's like this looks like a chat bot. So we're going to flag it 86% possible chat bot.
Yeah.
So I don't know. We've actually delayed our opening. Like I was planning on opening up for reading around, now April sort of thing. and I don't need to. I still have stuff in backlog that I can work with really through the end of the year if I want to. But I have to think of ways to deal with that when we do open up, because even if I don't have to pay for submissions, even if, how do we deal with a big mass of stuff other than starting out by saying, don't send me this stuff.
Yeah. And it is difficult. I know there's chat GPT 0. And I did do some tests with that where I had paragraphs that were solely chat, my paragraphs, and augmented ones, where I took a chat paragraph and then just kind of edited it. It was 100% correct every time. But are we really going to be able to do that? If you have 1,000 submissions, are we going to be able to copy paste that into? And I think there's a limit, and how many words it can do at once. So it's like it's just getting into like, let's just not use it for that. Let's just use it for the good things.
It is a real problem, because just in the regular stuff, like to say that this doesn't exist at all, we have regular jobs and we do this on the side. And if you have like 600 to 1,000 submissions and you manage to spend personally 5 minutes for each one, I think that's like an 80-hour work week, which is coming out of not a real work week. It's coming out of your evenings. So yeah, you get bombed with stuff. It's going to wreak havoc as far as just what you can physically do.
Yeah. Well, so I feel like I know what your answer is, but if you were going to make a judgment, if we were like taking chat and deciding its fate right now, would you say yay or nay? Like think that like the Caesar thing, is it I think it was actually thumbs down was good though, right?
I've heard that, but I don't know for sure.
We should ask chat.
I think chat is just like anything else. It's like the beginning of Photoshop. It's like the beginning of some technology. It's like, it's up to us to make it. It's up to us to what we do with the hammer. Okay.
Yeah. If
you're the guy who picks up the hammer and what you're doing is going around bonking people on the head and taking their money, bad use of hammer.
Yeah.
If you figure out how the tool can be improved and modified, and what the future of the tool is in a way that benefits the writing community, benefits, people, all that sort of thing, that is what you need to do. That's what we all need to be doing, trying to push things in. And we know it'll go sideways one way or another, because the internet didn't end up exactly where we thought it was going to go either. And,
no.
But the internet also, the other thing, you can say all you want about the internet being responsible for dividing people and polarizing and all that stuff. It also has given a mass of the world's knowledge to, I forget how many people are actually on the internet, but it might be half of humanity. It's like 4 billion minds have the ability to get a new education, have the ability to learn on their own. And when you talk about the overall survival of humanity, there's absolutely nothing more that you can do to move toward that than to educate and provide information to more and more minds. If you have a species with 4 billion out of 8 billion educated, passionate people who actually have skills and have learned to develop and engage with their communities and stuff, you can't kill the species. It doesn't matter what happens. The species is going to find a way to survive. So overall, it'll kind of be good eventually. It'll have good elements. It's like,
you're going to be like an ambiguous thumbs up.
Yeah. It's like there's always stuff that, no matter what, you have to fix it. You have to work with it. Nothing is just utopian because it is.
A.F. Stewart said it was thumbs down. That was good. So we're going to be confusing and say thumbs down on AI. Love it. Oh, well, I feel like we could have a billion of these conversations. AI is such an exciting topic, where actually I did want to talk about DreamForge, the magazine that you are the publisher of. We kind of met at the beginning of that, like both of our beginnings, because I didn't start with Space and Time back in 1966. So I feel like we're almost like sibling publications. Maybe even twins. DreamForge is the nice twin. Space and Time might be the pretty nice twin.
Well, yeah,
the twin that talks about dark things.
we were getting into it at just about the same time you were, because I remember our first experience with Space and Time was when we met and were first talking to Hildy Silverman, who was the publisher before you, and she was basically at that point telling us, well, I'm getting out of this, but I'm talking to this nice lady, and you should talk to her too.
Oh, that's too funny.
So yeah, so we did basically start up at the same time as far as getting into this, and I'll do the 2-second tour. But the reason we got into it was there was a point where it looked like we were going to be selling our day job business, and that didn't work out. We're still in it and all that kind of stuff, but that's okay. But at that time, as we were going through that, we were kind of looking. Jane and I were looking. Well, what's the next adventure? We're going to do. We've been doing our own business for 23 years. What's the next thing that we can do? And I was getting dissatisfied at the time with the negativity, grimdark, and just horrible things I was like reading and in the major science fiction magazines, and so much apocalyptic stuff going on. From The Walking Dead.
He's talking about us, everybody.
No. You guys do. You also do just traditional horror kind of thing. That I'm a fan of that too. I read Stephen King, so. It was just getting to the point where it was ridiculously grim. And one of the triggers that set me off was a Black Mirror episode that's called Metalhead. That is, first of all, exceptionally well done. Like, if you want to watch something, it's like, wow, that was well done. It's that episode Metalhead where basically the robot dogs kind of go around and destroy the last of humanity. And it's like,
I think I remember that one.
Oh yeah, it's very memorable. And
I was rooting for the dogs.
Yeah,
I remember that.
And it's like, oh, that's just so dark. It's like, because I grew up in the Star Trek universe. That was one of my main introductions to speculative fiction and sci-fi when I was 9 years old. And for me, there's always that idea of the kind of dedicated professional group of a community that works toward exploration and taking care of each other and that's how I generally see humanity or the best part of humanity. And I wanted to do something that was more along that line. And there was obviously an opportunity to do something that obviously wasn't there for me. Now, as we got into it, we learned about the same time this idea of hope punk was coming in, about the same time the idea of solar punk was coming in. So as we're starting to publish, we're just starting to learn about those things and gravitate a little in that direction. But that's what mainly we try to focus. A lot of our stories are focused on the idea of not a hero, but a community. It's like, how are these people taking care of themselves? How are they meeting challenges? And then how do they overcome? And what's, the next thing beyond that isn't the apocalyptic end of humanity. So we kind of, lean in that direction. We haven't had trouble actually getting people to submit those kind of stories. Like any magazine, we have trouble finding the best ones and the most entertaining ones. That's the short version.
Yeah, that's awesome. So I kind of think of you guys as what happens after the apocalypse.
Well, if you remember, like I said, Star Trek, if you remember in the canon of Star Trek, there is a eugenics war and an atomic war that almost takes humanity down. And then Starfleet and, the Vulcans come, that all is arising out of that idea of, it is a phoenix arising from the ashes. Now, I actually think we'll do better than Star Trek. I don't think we're going to end up there. I don't think we're going to have the apocalypse or the eugenics war or anything like that. And I think there are lots of trends that we're seeing. Like it's very easy to look at the Ukraine war, for example, and say, oh my God, World War III is going to start. Where do I build the bunker? But you can also look at that and say, and the nations of the world came together and they looked at this, global aggression from an old style, dictator and said, no. And they started basically providing, without directly getting involved, started providing the resources for that country to defend itself. And that may be a trend that continues down the line to the point where, countries basically see it's like, well, I'm not going to benefit from this.
Yeah.
And long-term, Russia isn't going to benefit from this. They've basically lost the ability to be a military player on the world stage. So they can just be there and be all pissy and try to conquer Ukraine for the next 10 years or whatever. But they lost like 5 days in. And, China's got to be looking at that as they consider what to do with Taiwan. It's like, what is that really going to benefit us? How horrible is this going to be? Yeah. So I think the world is going to avoid potentially
I hope so. I feel like we are smarter. We've all read.
We're going to inch toward the Starfleet without the apocalypse.
We've all read 1984. We all know what not to do. It doesn't work out for anybody. Let's just not do this.
Well, the unfortunate thing is the negativity and the doom stuff does benefit a lot of people, especially people who want to either get rich or get powerful from it.
Well, a few people. I'll say it benefits a few people.
Yes, it's just a few people. I don't mean it benefits humanity. Yeah. I mean, that's the reason why it continues. If you can stand in front of a crowd and get them all riled up to go burn the witches, you benefit from that. And that's essentially what we're seeing in a lot of cases. We're seeing the people who are perfectly willing to sell their humanity for the money, the power, and the recognition, because they're standing in front of us, getting everybody riled up, passing out the pitchforks, and pointing to the witches. And that's
don't look over here, people. Look at that one over there. She's bad.
So that's one of the things that we all have to fight against as well in the polarization sort of thing. It's so ridiculous, but I think a lot of people are seeing through a lot of the ridiculousness of it too. You have to be a little concerned with people who aren't, but
that's why I always appreciate you guys and support you and what you're doing, because I kind of feel like you're one of those the beacons trying to shine light on the darkness and illuminate the world around you.
Well,
and that's noble.
I'll give you a really quick example. We got into this not to basically become famous or have the biggest publication or whatever, but to basically with that idea of if you help one person, you're going to change something. It's the butterfly effect sort of thing. And that's kind of what I'm interested in, is what little things we can do. And I'll give you one really quick example. In this month's DreamForge Anvil 11, which is online now, free to read, go to dreamforgemagazine.com, click on the links. It'll take you to the web portal. Say, you want to read it. You don't have to buy the issue or subscribe. But we have an article from Robert E. Harphold, who is one of the trajectory design teams on the Artemis 1 mission, the actual mission to the moon. And he sold us a story back in issue 4, because he's also a science fiction writer. And he young guy sold us a story. And at the time I was talking to him and I said, basically, you're really articulate. You really have a writing style here. Have you ever thought of being a science writer, a science explainer? If you ever wanted to write an article, I'd be happy to consider publishing it in DreamForge. So what happens like 3 years later, 4 years later, whatever, he comes back and he says, I've just had the experience of my life. I've been on the Artemis 1 team. Here's the job I do. I'd like to write an article explaining how that worked from my team's point of view. And he said, I would never have thought to do that if you hadn't said I could be a science explainer. I could be a science writer. So there, one done.
That's awesome.
If he has a career, if he actually has a career that goes off and starts explaining science to kids or people in general or whatever, or he pursues that in his life, done. DreamForge is worth everything we put into it. And that's just one.
That's awesome.
That's that idea. And, I just think that's tremendous. By the way, that was a very interesting process because he just can't write you an article. It has to be approved by NASA and his team. And he's going to come on to our Pittsburgh science fiction group and do a Zoom call with us. And for that, he had to have a public affairs officer assigned to him. So,
wow.
So it's just a really interesting experience. But yeah, so there we go. That's what DreamForge is all about.
Awesome. Well, I'm going to put a link to that in this chat. Yeah, let's see. Now my chat GPT. No, the chat, the old way we used to do it. So everybody can go find that. I'm going to go read that because that sounds very cool. That's up now?
That's up now. Yeah.
Awesome.
And we also have an article by Anna Sun, who's in London, who wrote a very thorough and researched article on solar punk. And it's called Write the World You Want to Live In. And she has references off and links to different resources. She explains the origins of it and what it's all about. And so if you want to learn more about solar punk, you want to read Anna's article, Write the Future You Want to Live In. And then we have our article on the Artemis 1 mission. Wolf Moon has an article on writing, which this time is about the magic sword idea in writing fiction. And then we have 7 great stories for you as well.
Oh, awesome. All right. And so where would our readers, or I'm sorry, viewers, because we're not in a magazine right now, where would our viewers find this? Where would they go?
I should have had links ready, right?
I'm going to for everybody watching, come back, and these links will be in the description. I should have asked for those links.
Go to dreamforgemagazine.com. That's our main website. Okay. On dreamforgemagazine.com, you will find links to our readers portal where you will be able to read this stuff for free. You will also find links to be able to subscribe and, explain about things like our Dreamcasters, which is our writing group, which is our Patreon supporters who we get together and have wonderful conversations each month. And we have guests. You've been a guest on Dreamcasters.
I know those guys. They're awesome people.
And we've our biggest guest so far, which was last October, was Mary Robinette Cole, who talked to us and gave my people a free video class they could go to. So it's a very interesting, and we do challenges and writing challenges and all that kind of stuff. So
that's awesome. I had to mute for a second because I had the dogs go off.
That's okay.
Glamorous publishing life back here. We won't even get to the chicken publishing meeting that we've had mutually. That's for another time. We have run out of time. We've actually run over time because it's been so interesting. Oh, it's super interesting talking to you. And don't even get me started on AI because I will keep going forever. Chat knows this. This is why Chat gets snippy with me, I think. Now, I do want to say a couple things. Next weekend or next Saturday. Oh, I'm sorry. We're on Wednesday. Good grief. So this Saturday, we have Daniel M. Kimmel coming on with Critical by Profession. Oof, if I could speak, that would be good. And he is a movie reviewer in Space and Time. So he's going to be talking about being critical for a living. And then next Wednesday, we're going to finish our predictions of who's going to win the Stokers. We've been using a pendulum to do that. Last year was really accurate. So kind of doing the whole video thing this year. And then we're going to follow up the Saturday after that with Amanda Hayden, who is a poet, and she's going to discuss the art of sauntering with us. And if you are on this channel, I appreciate it. I hope you will like and subscribe. I'm delaying while I look for my fancy thing that I've made that I've never used yet. Where is my overlays? I know what I'm doing. Okay, so if you look up here, I actually got really impressed the other day because I noticed I have almost like over 700 subscribers. And so I was very like, wow, I should actually say that. They always say like and subscribe on videos. Like and subscribe. Okay, now that's done. And then the final thing we have is every week we end with a poet or we end with like a signal boost for somebody who could use it. So today we're going to end with Rook Riley, who does editing, which is one thing we didn't get to come up with is what is happening to editors with ChatGPT. But we won't go there now. This is for another topic, but this is Rook Riley talking about the author services that she offers. And with that, we'll end the show, and I'll see you Saturday. So thank you so much for coming on, Scott. You're awesome.
Been great.
Seriously, I can do this anytime. Call me. We'll talk about AI.
Okay.
All right. And thank you, everybody, for being here.
Hey, I'm author Rook Riley, an experienced educator with a military background. I'm looking to lower the barrier of admission to publishing by applying my passion for education to author services. I provide manuscript reviews, book coaching, and pep talks. I want to help tell the story that's locked inside you. So from cheerleader to draft midwife, whatever it is you need, I'm here to help. Remember, your story matters. Go to authorrookriley.com for more information.